Hello and welcome back to Molby On The Spot, your weekly chance. Thanks to Anfield Index Pro to hear the wit and wisdom of your friend and mine, the legend that is Mr. Jan Molby. We're not used to this, buddy. Bit of a weird one this week.
It certainly is. Good evening, everybody. Back-to-back defeats. I don't know quite what to say. Well, I actually do. I'm sure we'll try and get to the bottom of it all.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm sure you've probably tried to get yourself out of a few text message chats and phone calls and random people meeting you in the street quite quickly, because everyone's very good at complaining, Jan, but maybe not so great at coming up with solutions. We're going to focus on something around that later on, rather than just saying everything that's wrong. But we have to start with the fact that you mentioned back-to-back defeats. I don't know how often we've ever done a show in the time that we've been doing the show where we've had back-to-back defeats. Sure, we've had bad runs, but 2 defeats in a row, and it's kind of unheard of in the comparatively new slot era for certain. Obviously, it's 2 different competitions, so that mitigates the disaster a little bit. We'll take them each on their merits. We'll start with Palace, the first game in a couple of seasons that I haven't watched and worked. I was away on a personal celebration that weekend. It was a good one to miss, buddy, because when I look back over it, it seemed like a bit of a mess from beginning to end. Lots of poor performances. Obviously, we're going to talk about that again in the Champions League. But if you were to sum up Palace, what did you think was the main issue on the day? Was it just the fact that we had too many people who were out of form, or was it something a little bit more serious?
No, not necessarily more serious. I also think it has to do something to do with Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
We've struggled against Crystal Palace of late because of the way that they play. They play this unique system with the 3-4-2-1. The system that Manchester United can't get the hang of it. So I also think it's something to do with them. And I also thought that in the sort of aftermath of it all, the disappointment is obviously in the late goal that we conceded. But in the aftermath of it all, you kind of go, okay, it was one of those games that we all have. And I generally thought, Trevor, and this might just be me being naive or whatever, but, winning games hadn't motivated us to play well, had it? Nothing had changed, had it? We still carry on playing in the same vein and still getting over the line in the same sort of way. And I thought, well, maybe a defeat will sort of that reaction. I've been there, Trevor. Even as a squad, you think we need something here. Maybe we do need a defeat just for everybody just to refocus. So I thought, well, maybe this is the moment. Yeah, we refocus. We go to Galatasaray. I always get a little bit fed up with these away games, Trevor, where you go to Turkey and people go, the atmosphere is unbelievable. They can't play. I would have been amazed if that would have affected any of the Liverpool players. But then when you see the game and Galatasaray, Trevor, I find it difficult to. Are they top of the championship in terms of level? I don't even think they're a good team. They've got some good names that we recognise in it, but not big names. So I was really, really surprised that we went from the Palace performance to a performance that was even worse. I just don't get the hang of that. But then there is a lot. In our season, has been wrapped up in wins, hasn't it? We won. But I think if you open it all up, there's been problems from the first game, hasn't it, against Bournemouth. But I generally thought that before our performances and lack of form for certain individuals, before that starts to hurt us, we will sort it out. I generally thought that would be the case, Trevor. That's why I've been pretty calm. And that's why, when you do these shows all the time, I think if we just did this once a month, it'd be so much easier, wouldn't it? Because you would have a bigger sample to talk about and you wouldn't have to be so dramatic. So I guess there will be some Liverpool fans now putting it all in the melting pot, won't they? And going, it's all going oh so wrong, isn't it? And on the evidence of it, it does look like we're a million miles off. And I just saw on one of the websites, Carragher's, he's out again, isn't he? I think it's really, really difficult, Trevor. Years and years ago, I used to do a lot of stuff with Liverpool Football Club, and And this was in a time where you had no choice to be critical because we weren't very good. But you also felt comfortable being critical because you didn't think they want to put it right next game. And that's the problem I have now, is that how far do you go with your criticism? Because you're looking and you're thinking, well, surely this ain't going to last forever, is it? This has to be a matter of time before we sort it all out. And I'm sure we spoke about this, Trevor, is that in the end, when we end up with what we might think and Arne Slot might think is our strongest 11, it might not have all our star players in it, because we're searching for the balance. I think that's the big thing. And we're searching for a balance.
Yeah, the collection of footballers versus the team thing, I guess. And it's interesting you mentioned Carragher, and it's going to fit into our second topic, which is, what can we suggest here that might actually work? He was talking about, I think, most of last season, kind of having a regular pop about Dom Szoboszlai and his form, and suggesting that Liverpool needed a proper number 10. And now we've got Wirtz, and he's calling for the midfield to be reconstructed back the way it was with Dom Szoboszlai in there. And it just, what it strikes me as, Jan, kind of what you're talking about there, the need to be overly dramatic. We don't do that in this show. It's not really in either of our natures. And I think that probably is a strength, because if you're always just looking for the next bit of an attention headline, I guess you go to those places. For me, none of that makes sense. And I was glad to see you go straight to, well, listen, Palace are decent, because they are. And they're going to give everyone a tough time for the most part. And so you could maybe accept a bad performance, a bad day at the office, but it gets a little bit compounded then when you go to Galatasaray. And again, I'm glad you pointed out that they are not anything like that level of side. People might think that's weird, like they're top of the Turkish league, they're in the Champions League, they're, 7 wins out of 7 in their domestic competition. But they got hockeyed 5-1 by Eintracht Frankfurt, and they're full of Premier League lads who didn't quite make it in the Premier League. We have to be honest about that. So this is a whole different level of defeat. And this is where I suppose we should, it's tempting to go into the details of those matches, but loads of people will have done that. We'll get into them if they happen. But I'd like to sort of focus on what we might be able to do to get out of it. Like you said, you've been in this situation, man. You don't want a habit taking hold. Winning's a good habit. Losing's an equally addictive habit, even though you don't want to be addicted to it. It strikes me as if there is going to have to be a big compromise somewhere. You've already alluded to that it mightn't necessarily incorporate all our best players. Can you just kind of tease out a little bit what you mean there? Because I know you're not going to individually pick out players and say he's the problem, but what do you mean by that, and where are you thinking that might be applied?
Well, I think it, again, is very difficult because it's kind of, what approach do you take? Now, I would think, and this also crosses my mind, is that I think a lot of people would think, what was so wrong with last season? What was so wrong with the way that we did things last season? So is there a way back? Does Robbo go back in and play as a left back? And young Bradley, who's having a tough time of it at the moment, but do you just stick with him as a right back? Because I think we're learning that Frimpong is not a full back. And do we go back in with our midfield, which is obviously Gravenberch and Szoboszlai, and maybe McAllister? He's having some issues, so you could get away with saying, well, okay, we'll play with Curtis Jones, and then you go with Gakpo and Salah on either flank, and then whoever you choose of the other two as a central striker. Or do you view it as, no, the way forward is to get the players who are now not playing very well and out of form, and you stick with them and you turn it with them, and I'm kind of thinking that you turn it with them. I don't think you can do what we did in the summer and then a couple of months in the season we're reversing back to what we were. I think the idea is that we've got to try and go with what we got. It requires a lot of a lot of rethink because, I mean, let's start with the fullbacks. I mean, the fullbacks are not in the way that Robbo and Trent were, in the way that they play. So Kirkes, Trent was famed for his passing, but there was nothing wrong with Robbo's little passing behind either. Was he had that in his locker, didn't he? You know, how often have you seen that, him scooping one over the top? Kirkes doesn't do that, you know. And then obviously Bradley will never ever have the passing ability of Trent. So the fullbacks have to play in a different way, and you have to then decide. See, I think you've got to start with the back four in the midfield, because there's no way those attackers playing up there on that island on their own can play well without there being a structure behind them. There has to be a structure behind them, and that includes the fullbacks. Konate is that a form thing, Trevor? I mean, he found those couple of performances, didn't he, against Arsenal and against Burnley, and you thought, here we go, the big man is back. At the moment, he makes the manager nervous, the fans nervous, his teammates nervous, and himself nervous, and that's not a good thing. But we don't have a lot of options. The young Italian, the only is injured, and you're almost petrified of playing Joe Gomez, because if he has to play a full game, he'll probably be injured. So it is a problem, but it is to do with structure. And then we come to midfield, and there has to be a structure in midfield. How often did we talk about Fabinho, Henderson, Wijnaldum? What a dream to play with, yeah? For the back four, to have them three in front of you, and for the front three, to have them three behind you. Absolutely dream. So we need to get back to that. So we praise Ryan Gravenberch for the way that he plays, and he plays well. I'm just more and more thinking that if Florian Wirtz has got to be in and around the team, and we talk about the freedom of Ryan Gravenberch to go and join in, I think we have to rein that in and go, you're not a six, Ryan. We all know he's not a six, but you have to play as a six. You're the only six we've got, you know, because it can't be right that we talk about who's been our best players this season. Alisson, Van Dijk's been okay. Gravenberch, Szoboszlai, and Hugo Ekitike. They've been our best players, haven't they? Well, two of them five are midfield players, but we have such a flat spot in every game where we lose control. Where do you lose control, Trevor? You lose control in midfield. So it isn't to do with how individuals play. It's to do with how they play together, you know. And I'm a little bit surprised that Arne hasn't seen that, you know, that he hasn't thought there's a reason that we have these long periods. You know, I mean, we keep coming back in about we've thrown away 3-2-0 leads. Okay, we went on to win those games, isn't it? But there has to be a reason for that, and I'm thinking that, yeah, you can come away from the game and go, I thought Ryan Gravenberch really played well, but did he also play well for the team? You know, so that's kind of where I've got to. The easiest thing, Trevor, is to say that Konate's rubbish, let him go to Real Madrid. Curtis hasn't said, let's go back to Robbo because he's a better player. Bradley's having a hard time, and Frimpong is not a right back. And then you go into Gravenberch and his role, and McAllister's not in form, and Florian Wirtz so far hasn't shown anything, and Alexander Isak hasn't shown anything either, and Cody Gakpo's become a little bit of a one-trick pony, isn't? And Mo Salah's been anonymous. But that's kind of the easy thing in it, Trevor. But that doesn't solve anything, does it?
No.
And it can't be that bad, can it? You know.
The statement you made there about how it's not necessarily how people are playing individually, but how they play together. We won a league title last season with no number 6 in the team, despite the fact that the media were constantly telling you, and fans who decided to believe it were constantly telling you that Ryan Gravenberch was our 6. What we had, and I've been saying this till I'm blue in the face, was a division of duty, a division of labor. Everybody doing a little bit of everything, and we had McAllister on fire, which he's clearly not now. So that unit is problematic, and it's going to have to be, I think, reinstated to something like what it was. And if we are going to continue it with Szoboszlai at right back because he doesn't trust the new expensive guy he bought or the up and comer that we have, then we are going to have to put Curtis Jones in there, and then it's starting to get thin in that unit. But guys are going to have to do that thing where everybody does a bit of everything again. We don't have a specialist. And, you know, you can ask Gravenberch to do it, but with the best will in the world, it's not his skill set. And we don't have one who can do it. We asked McAllister to do it for a while. That didn't really work well either. So if we look at sort of reinstating the midfield to something like what it was, to give that little bit of stability with people we know can do a job, which can at least get you over the line in the league, that's got to be good enough for most people. The defense then becomes an interesting thing, because immediately the defense is more looked after. So maybe Ibu Kanate gets a couple of games where he's not as exposed down that side. And maybe, you know, we can get Kirkes back into some sort of form. The problem with Kirkes thing, and this is what I really want to focus on the fullbacks now with you, is, to me, it seems like Kirkes, but don't worry, by the way, folks, we're getting to Florian Wirtz and we're getting to the forwards. But with Kirkes, it doesn't look like we're allowing him to play like he got into the team of the season. Bombing down the flank, overlapping, pulling balls back, crossing balls over. You could say that his pal on that side, Gakpo, isn't helping by not playing him in when he goes on those runs. But it doesn't seem like that's very much what we're looking for him to do. He seems to be almost like a third centre half. He's very central a lot of the time, Jan. Has Arne bitten off a bit too much here in the attempt to change the shape to accommodate the skill set of Florian Wirtz? Do you think that's having a knock-on effect back through these units? Because it's a bit weird what we're doing with the fullbacks at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree, Trevor. It is a problem. I mean, it was one of the strengths of Jurgen Klopp, wasn't it? In that you kind of knew where's he focusing, where's our attacking threat, yeah. And we knew with Robbo and Trent that's where our attacking threat is. That's how we played, isn't it? I mean, also to the extent where you now look at Mo's role. You know, Mo is started last year when Arne came in and gave him a slightly different role. Mo is wider than he's ever been. But whereas before he used to come in and Trent came on the outside and Robbo came on the outside. So that's just become a little bit of a problem, isn't it? And it's almost as if Arne is saying to the fullbacks, work it out. You know, work out what do you think, what's right, where shall I be on the pitch and whatever. And I think possibly, if anything, the game's moved on from that. You know, the game's moved on from you working it on. You talk about Ryan Gravenberch before and his role, and it's no difference than last year. But I just think the opposition have had a look and they've gone, okay, we're never quite sure what Liverpool are going to do in terms of attacking, but we do know what to do without the ball. You know, we do know where the players are and where the players aren't when they lose the ball. And Ryan is one of them, isn't it? So yeah, I think it is. There's nothing wrong with going back to basics and going, all right, clear and concise. What do we want our fullbacks to be? And you're right. You know, we maybe spoke about Kirk's first game of the season against Bournemouth, where I thought the distance to Van Dijk was too great, but now it's too close, isn't it? You can't be a top team. You can't be a top team, Trevor, if you're afraid of releasing your fullbacks. And I just think it affects everything. So yeah, getting the fullback sorted would be a good point, absolutely, because we are getting hurt in those areas, both with and without the ball.
And if we continue to play with a double pivot, is the phrase that people keep using, of two of last year's three, and so far it's been mostly, you know, two from the three, Mac, Grav, and Szoboszlai. If we play with two of those, with Florian Wirtz ahead of them, and then another three nominal attackers, usually Gakpo and Salah and A9, that seems to be the issue, really, for the midfield. For me, that seems to be the issue, because what you have then is you've broken up that unit where everyone was doing a bit of all the donkey work. I'm not saying that Florian Wirtz doesn't run around like a maniac and put in a shift. He does. Somebody recently went out of their way to point out to me that he is top of the chances created alongside the ex-City lads, the Jack Grealish. And great. And we can all see that, but we can all watch games as well. And we know that this is not the player. This is not the player he's not showing the player that he is. So there's something not happening for him. As a result, there's something not happening for the team. in the midfield area, which is having a knock-on effect to the defense and the exposure. Because Jan, look how easy it is for teams to play through us. We have a very soft center, which is not right. It's not right, because we are missing max work rate, no doubt. And maybe he could plaster over a few cracks if he was on top form alongside Gravenberch with Wirtz ahead of him, and we could have Dom progressing the ball from deep in the right back channel, and that could be great. That could really work well, but that is not an option for us at the moment because he's not in form. He's not fit. There's something off with Mac. So this experiment, there has to come a breaking point. Now, I want to go back to something I said to you last week about Peter Beardsley, and that when he arrived, I might be playing it up in my head a little bit. I don't think he was having quite the rough patch of a start that Wirtz is. Yeah. Is it still comparable, or are we getting into a stage now where it's getting to the point where Wirtz might need to be either taken out or put somewhere different in the team?
Well, I think if you go back to 1987 and you paid 1.9 million for the player, it's kind of almost in the same ballpark as Liverpool paying what they pay for Florian Wirtz. The difference was obviously that the football that the 87-88 team played was great, and they were winning games. So he kind of carried Peter in a little way until he found his feet. But the last thing you said, and this is kind of where I'm heading, because you don't buy a player like Florian Wirtz and then go, we'll try and see if we can get in the team somehow. He has to be, it's like, yes, I know at the moment he's not big enough, because he's only 22 and he's younger, whatever. But in terms of how he plays, you can't just go. Dirk Kuyt is an example. And if we sign him as a striker, and he's not good enough as a striker, we don't convert him to a hard-working right-sided midfield player, and he has a great career. You can't do that with Florian Wirtz, can you? You can't just go, well, all right, Florian Wirtz, now we're going to convert you into just a hard-working midfield player, because that's not his game, is it? His game is about being the main man, isn't it? And I think if he can't be the main man, I think the right thing is to leave him out, and then give him opportunities from the bench, because when you come on as a substitute, it's a totally different game to when you start the game. So that might, yes, it's a massive big move, isn't it? And I also know that how the club feels about, we have this saying, don't we? Our money has to be on the pitch. You pay in excess of 100 million for the player, he has to be on the pitch. But if it's not right, it's not right, is it? And it's not necessarily a criticism. I don't buy into, he's a young player, blah, blah, but he's played 140 Bundesliga games. He's played 25 games in Europe. He's probably got 25 or 30 caps for Germany. So I'm not buying that excuse. That's not the reason. But there are other reasons. And physical is one of them, isn't it? And also, he has too many touches, doesn't he? Which opposition sometimes like players who have touches, don't they? Because it gives you a chance. The players that you hate playing against are the players who don't have any, it's gone. It's gone. You can never get anywhere near them. But Florian Wirtz has touches, doesn't he? And I think maybe that's another issue. He likes that little last touch in it just to make it perfect. And we saw it again against Galatasaray 3 or 4 times. Players from behind are just coming in, nipping it away from it, aren't they? So that's another issue, isn't it? There's nothing, I'm not suggesting anything here, One of my favourite players of all time, Trevor, Jari Litmanen, and he came to Anfield, and he wasn't Jari Litmanen, was he? That's a real regret of mine. Because when we signed him, I went, yes, I want to go and watch this guy. I want to go and see what this guy, and he's a real baller, you know what I mean? And for Wirtz, it's the same, isn't it? Most players, when we sign players, it's just, okay, here's another player, We sign another player. I have no doubt because of the recruitment, it's a good player. But it doesn't get me, whoa, I can't wait, But this kid did, This kid is the type of player I want to see, So I was really looking forward to seeing him. And I think we need to help him. I don't think it helps him. So even against Galatasaray again, late on in the game, go and play wide left and whatever, go and play wide left at Crystal Palace and whatever. That's not what you do with a player of that caliber. You know what I mean? I think so.
from the perspective of a man who was a creative midfielder himself,
Yeah.
you're talking about him taking a bit too much out of the ball. And I remember one of the first shows we did, I was really curious to ask you about, what happens if you get into a bit of a rut. And you volunteered this thing, which was, look, you just start doing everything simple, really simple, like pare it all back. Even if it is conservative for a while, you just root out the mistakes. So again, wouldn't this be coaching though? Wouldn't you think that Arnie would be saying to him, look, lad, take it in, lay it off, move, do it again? Because you are taking too much out of it. You don't have the physical frame to deal with these big rocks who are coming in and around you with great energy and enthusiasm, because everyone's cup final day is against Liverpool these days. So do it simple. I mean, I don't know. Is there anything to be said? Is that a silly way?
No, of course there isn't, Trevor. That's still there's so many easy and free passes in the game today, isn't it? Where you can just go bang, 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 and just pass it around between 3 or 4 of you. Yeah, doesn't have to go anywhere. Back in our day, there was an expectation: go forward. You didn't get away with playing 7, 8, or 9 passes in your own half. They wanted it forward, didn't they? But in today's game, you can ping it off a centre half and get it and play a few first-time passes, get a good crisp passes into him, but just pass him safe. What he's trying to do at the moment, he's trying to help all his teammates with his passing. Yeah, so he's trying to take the trouble out of the pass for them. You know yourself when you're a footballer, and I passed the ball to Ronnie Whelan, and I know I'd pass him into some kind of trouble, but it was the only kind of ball that was on. But then other times you go, I've helped Steve Nicol here. I put it in front of him. All he has to do is whatever. And Florian is trying to help everybody with every pass he plays. Yeah. But you see, Galatasaray, how many 5 or 6 passes? Of those passes, aren't they? They're just not right, isn't it? Because he's just trying to do too much with the passes. Where, yes, the play might have stalled slightly, but it would have been a safer pass, and it would probably would have been better for his own confidence that his DNA passing is not working at the moment. And that must really, because he's a different passing footballer to Xabi Alonso, yeah? Xabi Alonso was more of a long range. This kid is different, takes him in tight areas and little neat passes in it. But if your DNA is not working, that must be really difficult, isn't it? I mean, Florian Wirtz probably expect to come to the Premier League and get muscle off the ball and struggle physically, because that's not how he plays, in it. But he would have always thought, yeah, but me with the ball will get me out of trouble, and it's not. It's getting him into more trouble, I think. I mean, somebody said, he does all these flicks and plays 1-2s with nobody, and then he loses the ball, and then he works very hard to get it back. And maybe that's a bit harsh, isn't it? But it is kind of in that ballpark, isn't it? Whoa, calm down.
Yeah, and I think you've already answered the question, but I'm going to put it to you anyway, because it's one of the solutions, in inverted commas, that's being kicked around by an awful lot of people. And I think you can understand it. It's keeping the money on the pitch kind of argument, is that you do sort of shunt them to the left, where Cody Gakpo is underwhelming at the moment. And you at least then have him as a presence, a creative presence on the park. You were saying, though, that perhaps it might be better to extract the lad altogether while it's not working out. And I can see the problem there for Slot as a coach. It's like, well, what am I going to do to this kid if I take him out? What am I doing to my system, which I've decided is going to work this way now if I take him out? And it's the argument, isn't it, for playing through it or making the change because you can make the change. It's a difficult one for the manager. What do you think, first of all, about that simplistic idea of shunting him to the left into the Gakpo position?
Yeah, but so what are we looking for him to do when he goes to the left? Are we looking for him to be a left-sided playmaker? But that doesn't work with the way we want to play. Yeah, so I'm just not sure I kind of like the way that the team was set up last year, yeah? I like the simplicity of it all. I like the way that we played. And I'm thinking, right, we put Florian Wirtz wide left. What do you want him to do? I want him to be a wide left playmaker. I'm not sure that's going to work either. So I would go back to the best solution probably. But in terms of, I can guarantee you that Mo would have been disappointed being left on the bench
Mm.
against Galatasaray. But I actually think, and I've heard a couple of interviews with Florian Wirtz, and also when he was back with the German national team, whatever. I think he knows he's struggling. Yeah, he knows that what I'm showing is not me. So I actually think that, I'm suggesting it would be quite an easy conversation, but I think the kid will probably go, no, I can see why. You know, and all you need, Trevor, is that one moment in it. You know, that one moment that you can come off the bench with 20 minutes to go, and that is your one moment, the pass or the goal, isn't it? Because that's what we're after, really, isn't it? We're after the pass or the goal. You know, that's what we're waiting. I said this many a times. It doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you cost, and it doesn't matter what you've done at previous clubs. You still have to announce yourself at Anfield, don't you? You have to give the fans and go, this is why I'm here. You know, so I think it's a conversation that's possible to have. You know, I don't think he's got a big ego at all. He doesn't look that type of lad. He's level-headed, and I think you'd probably be able to say, you know, at the moment, and I wouldn't call him a luxury player because he's not a luxury player because he works extremely hard. There's nothing in terms of that. I think it's easy to say maybe now, and you could even use the rest of the team as an excuse and go, you know, at the moment we're not quite playing. You know, we're not quite getting you in the game. We just want to try and do something else in it, but don't worry, you'll get your minutes. Hence the reason that I was a little bit surprised maybe that he wasn't involved against Southampton. I thought that would have been a nice game for him to play in, a nice sort of open game. But we're here now, Trevor, aren't we, where it's interesting. What do we do on Saturday now? You know, and one thing is the starting 11, but the second thing is how we play, and of course, ultimately the result of it all.
Yeah, there's probably a different world where, say, something like that little Frimpong knockdown header and his lovely little half volley, if that goes flying into the top corner, we might be having
then you're away, because also that's a great goal, isn't it?
Yeah, you're away. Yeah.
For the people who don't remember, go back and watch Peter Basin score the goals like that against Everton off the crossbar. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know, that swivel where you get your body in a perfect position because you saw him shift his feet, didn't you? You know, to make sure that the balance was right. So he scores that goal, he's away, isn't it? Well, he didn't.
Like you say, we have a baller there, and just in his defense, in case, because some people can't seem to have a nuanced conversation without taking one extreme side or the other. So if you're one of those people who can't manage to hear anything vaguely critical without getting upset, in the defense of Wirtz, you could say, couldn't you, Jan, there's not a whole lot of movement ahead of him. And I was really surprised. Like you, I was amazed. I wondered, did that amount to Mo Salah being dropped? I thought it was weird. The Dave that I was on the show with immediately afterwards said, look, it's probably rested because nearly everyone has gotten a game out so far. So maybe it is that. But like you know, like you were saying, I doubt very much Mo Salah wants to be rested at any point between now and when he finishes playing. That's just the kind of lad he is. But the movement ahead of Wirtz, you could say, has been a bit restricted. Is there a world in which we get a fit and firing Isak back as quickly as possible into something like a semblance of the best form that he can have? We get Salah doing bits on the right. And who knows, Jan, is there a wild attacking combination where you have maybe Hugo Ekitike coming in from that left side? Then all of a sudden, I think the best feature of the game last night was Hugo's movement at centre forward. I was really impressed with him. And he's got a bit of dog in him. He'll stick a foot in. He really does grapple for the ball. But his movement was fantastic. And so I'm thinking, if you got intelligent movement from Isak, Ekitike, and Mo Salah ahead of Wirtz, maybe that's just an absurdly attacking lineup. But could it work?
Yeah, there's a saying in football, isn't it? You know, that, of course, great players can play together. You know, great intelligent players can play together. But would we then have to reshape Mo's role, you know, in terms of how wide he is? And also when we defend or backtrack, he cheats a little bit, doesn't he? You know, he has more license to stay further up the pitch. So would we have to change his role because you're trying to get Florian Wirtz in, who's... So the majority of what we saw last year, a lot of diagonals. That's how we play. You know, even this year we've seen Virgil van Dijk swing 4 or 5 left-footed diagonals out to Mo Salah and whatever. You would also have to that would have to be a secondary play now, wouldn't it? If we want to play through Florian Wirtz, because that's not how he plays. Everything he does is along the ground. It's slid in behind. It's slid in between, isn't it? So you would also have to change that. So it is quite a lot you need to change in terms of the movement. But I do agree that the movement is a little bit static, and there's no doubt that Alexander Isak, he's clever movement, and I just every time I look and I go, why did you do that messing around at Newcastle? Why couldn't you just have trained with them and played 2 or 3 Premier League games, and we wouldn't have been suffering now, because of him being rusty? Why did you have to do that? It's biting us in the backside now, isn't it? But there's no doubt that most things are in our squad. The one thing probably missing is an out-and-out Rodri type number 6 in it. But all the other things are, you can look at the fullbacks and you go, well, I could see the fullbacks being defensive fullbacks, but I could also see the fullbacks being attacking fullbacks. Whoever plays centre half like Virgil will always be okay, because Virgil will look after you and he'll make sure that things are okay. So most things are in our squad, and this is the great thing of, well, this is the frustrating bit, isn't it? Of how do we put it all together? We've only got to go back 6 weeks, Trevor, and we thought this is going to be some season, and I can't wait. And here we are. And this, on one hand, is the great thing about football, isn't it? That there is no guarantees. And now we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to find solutions again. We do. Yeah, I think most people do believe that. Arne Slot has something really, really special in his locker. He's proven that already, isn't it? Now is the time already to find something else, because it's not quite working.
No, understatement of the year. And, we have the added complication now into the bargain of some injuries. I heard it put, I think it was by Dave Hendrick on a show today, and I just wanted to run this past you. We're all aware of what happened with Mark Guehi, and we wanted him over the line. But we also have to be aware, when you're making that point, you have to be aware that we were looking to ship Joe Gomez out as well. So let's get let's get that straight in our heads. It looks as though the club were willing to go into the season with 4 first-team centre halves, and with Leone hanging about as, get some experience and do bits. Jan, he was such a revelation, the kid, in his debut. It's heartbreaking to hear what's happened to him. I heard someone today suggest that perhaps this might be a year to a year and a half, because you would think young means recover quickly, but it can actually have the opposite effect. You need to get it right. You got to stabilize all his joints and muscles around and make sure that he's building on a proper platform. That's just heartbreaking for that kid. But it means he is absolutely out of the loop for us for a while. He's not going to be a consideration for the team. So I'm getting back to a simple thing here. Is it feasible to go in when you play 2 centre halves? Is it feasible to go in? And one of them, by the way, is a veteran, Virgil van Dijk. The other is injury prone, Ibu Konate. Is it feasible going into a season the way we did? And are we really in a situation now where we're counting the weeks until we can do something about this via recruitment? Because that's how it feels to me. It feels like we're not 1 short, but 2.
Yeah, I think is reckless the right word? I think the reckless is probably exaggerating a little bit, because I have no doubt that when they've had the meetings and with Arne Slot, and because of the way last season went and how well he coped, there's no doubt he would have said to the recruitment team that, okay, if needs be, I can cope with what I've got. Endo can play a game as a centre half, especially at home. Gravenberch can play there. Maybe Robbo could play. But that was in a scenario where we were playing well, Trevor. Arne Slot he's got it in his head, hasn't he? With what we brought in and the attacking ability we have, we can kind of get away with being a big loose at the back. What we found out already now, isn't it? We can't, So Arne Slot is now thinking, I need centre halves to play centre half. I can't stick Endo in as a centre half because we're not playing well enough. He'll get exposed. We saw when he came on against Bournemouth as a right back, and we're thinking we'll be okay. Bang, exposed, lack of pace, whatever, isn't it? So when you're playing well, you get away with almost anything, and that's what happened last year. And I think maybe Arne Slot got a bit carried away with that and thinking we can cope. No doubt in the Eredivisie you can play people out of position, you get away with it or whatever. But when you're not on it, and also when teams have had 12 months to look at exactly how you play, then you're in trouble on it. So I think he's thinking. So what I'm saying is we need Konate to play. Almost as poorly as he plays, he's a centre half, and he has centre half qualities. Physical, strong. He's good in the air. He kind of knows. Well, he knows the positional play of a centre half, isn't he? So we need him to play. This is not the time to go. Well, we knew what it was like when Virgil van Dijk was injured, and we tried everybody, and we weren't having a great season, and you get exposed. You don't get away with it, Trevor. So I wouldn't suggest it was reckless. It was overconfident, I think. It was overconfident thinking that I think we'll be okay. We can cope if anything goes wrong. And we're there now, aren't we? Where we don't need it to get any worse. We kind of need to stop this now, don't we? And that isn't by going to Chelsea and winning 4 or 5-0, but that's going to Chelsea and having a different outlook. We need to look different as a team. Somebody said, and I don't know if somebody said that Crystal Palace created 7 big chances against us on Saturday, which is the most a Premier League team have conceded this season. So there's your problem, isn't it? If that's kind of what you're letting through onto your centre halves, the centre halves got their hands full, that's for sure. And sometimes you look at certain areas of the pitch and you go, I remember when I became the manager of Gittham's areas, and then people go, the centre halves can't defend. And after 5 games, they went, the fullback can't defend. And I changed the fullbacks and won the league. So sometimes you look at things and you go, where is your problem? You go, he's the problem, or maybe he isn't the problem, But I'm sure Arne Slott's all over that.
Yeah, that's why I think I'm not a great fan of how Ibu's played several games. But when you are that open through the middle, and then if you don't have the right caliber of defensive presence either side, I think you're exactly right. That's just the way it is. And again, I see people there in the chat sometimes, like Bob saying that we wanted to bring in Guehi. It wasn't a plan to go with 4, but we were going to sell Joe Gomez, and only for they couldn't get it over the line because they couldn't get the medicals they wanted to do. Joe would be gone. And we're looking at Joe now as our, third centre half, and hoping that we don't have to call on him too much because
don't you think we're petrified of playing him?
Yes, man. Yes, yeah.
In case, because you're looking. I mean, okay, he played against Southampton, but beyond that, you look and you think, could he play? Could he come on? Whatever, play a bit more? And you go, no, I don't think we want to play him. Because if in a couple of games we need him from the start and he's not available, so I think we're a little bit worried. So of course the idea was absolutely to be covered in every position. Absolutely, that was the plan, wasn't it? But it doesn't always go to plan, does it? And let's not forget, Crystal Palace has to say in this,
They do, and I think an awful lot of people might have to put the Guehi thing to bed because there's certainly weird things going around. And why would Glasner be any less insistent halfway through a campaign? Makes no sense to me, especially if they're making a little bit of progress in that European competition. It makes very little sense to me that they would do anything other than want to retain him. The other injury of note from last night was Alisson kind of came about through some Konate sloppiness. And it looked like one of those injuries where you just go, how's he even injured? It's infuriating because he's just so far and away the best keeper I think I've ever seen play the game, Jan. Yeah, you have been in the presence of a lot better footballers in real life than I could dream of. But Alisson must be right up there, man. I mean, Mamardashvili is a superb goalkeeper, and it doesn't pain me to think we're going into Chelsea and maybe a run of games with him in nets. In the same way as when Queven Keller was as best, you didn't panic. It was like, okay, we've got a good lad there. But Alisson is the difference between us getting humiliated against Crystal Palace and us losing a game in the last second against Crystal Palace. That's how good he is.
The one thing that worries me, and I totally agree, Mamardashvili, there's nothing wrong with him. He's a right size, he's a good goalkeeper, he kicks him out, he's a good shot stopper and whatever. But if you look at the majority of chances being created against Liverpool, the little balls slip down the side of the centre half, so the fullbacks, people running through and goal. Yeah. Now that's Ali's game in it. You know, if you look, and you probably wouldn't have seen all the Champions League goals last year, but we did a goal show on TV and we watched all the goals. And the one thing I'm looking at is goalkeepers making the decision for the attackers. You know, sprinting out, sitting down, defenders, attackers just lifts it over them. You know what I mean? But you never see Ali do that. You know, he stands, and again, the one way he gets injured, isn't it? There's just so many. So that's where there is no way Mamas really is at that level in those situations. So that's the only thing that slightly worries me. That should Chelsea, and to be fair, Chelsea got their own problems, and I don't know whether they've actually got a striker who's prepared to run in behind. That's available for the game on Saturday. But should Chelsea get one or two of them chances where they run through straight in on goal with a little bit of time? I don't know, because there is goalkeepers in those situations that fill absolutely nothing. You know, when the striker's coming through them and they come out and they fill absolutely nothing. You know, you can roll it to the right, to the left, to the legs, you know, whatever. So that might be an issue in it. So yeah, I totally agree with Ali. He's a unique goalkeeper. There's very few of these, you know, saves for the cameras. He's just a very, very efficient goalkeeper. Will we miss him? I'd like to say we won't, but we might just look back in a couple of weeks and go, we got away with it. Well, it's not case of getting away with it because Mohamed as well is just fine.
I'm always aware that I'm a little bit one-eyed when I'm talking about some of our players, especially the current lot. I just do want to press you on that. Can you recall many, if any, better than Alisson Becker?
No, I mean, I think you can go through history of football and go, you know, who was the best goalkeeper back in the 70s, 60s, or whatever? It was probably Lev Yashin, the Russian, well, it was called Soviet Union then, wasn't it? You go into the 70s and you look at, there was a lot of good English goalkeepers then, wasn't it? With you know, Gordon Banks and Peter Shilton came on the scene, and you had Ray Clemens, the great German goalkeeper, Sepp Maier. Into the 80s, you had another Russian, didn't you, Vasiliev, or whatever his name was. You had a German, a Belgian, and then you come to the 90s, and there was sort of Peter Schmeichel time, wasn't it? And Buffon and all these goalkeepers. Close up, Peter Schmeichel was the best goalkeeper in the world for a period. You know, whether that was 2 years or 5 years or longer, I don't know. But he was a bit more erratic. You know, he wasn't as good. He helped the team through his saves. But I think Alisson also helps the team through more than just his saves. You know, the way that he makes decisions, and he never adds. You know, if we're in a situation, he never adds to that by panic, whereas maybe sometimes Peter Schmeichel did. And then, of course, the only one left, and he runs him very close because he had a similar mentality and personality, is the great Neville Southall. You know, Neville was kind of in the same mindset. If you're in trouble in a situation, he would never particularly add to that. You know, he would try and take the heat out of the situation. But Alisson is unique. It's bizarre to think that there's still people who think that there's better goalkeepers in the world than him. Bizarre.
I'm glad you gave Southall a shout out, because I remember being envious of very few players from other teams back in the day, 80s particularly. But he was a guy who you just thought, well, there's actually nobody better than him. He's an incredible shot stopper. And, you know, he always looked like he was kind of thrown together out there on the pitch. But wow, just in terms of actual ability, not too many people like him. The comments there threw up something that I wanted to mention to you. I don't know who it was, so forgive me. It's long since scrolled past. But it was on the topic of whether or not we'd get Guehi in January, and how it won't be an issue what Glasner wants, because Glasner will already be at Manchester United, said the wag in the comments. And I've heard that said from a few different people. I was wondering, as you've got your kind of ear to the ground there was talk about Gareth Southgate. I don't know if that's just like sort of you know, mischievous stuff that's coming out there, but have you heard any potential links there? How hot do you think the seed is for Amorim at the moment there?
I think at best it's lukewarm. I'm amazed. So I was at Brentford on Saturday, and I was on the gantry. And within 2 minutes of the game finishing, the other people on the gantry, ex-players working, they almost came running over. And they've gone, that's it, isn't it? He's gone, and you go, well, yeah, I mean, it just gets worse and worse from game to game. And then since then, you hear that they're desperate to give him a full season. They're desperate to give him a full season with the players available that he's bought. I mean, he's only 4 or 5 games off a season now, isn't he? I think he's been in charge for 33 or 34 games already. They seem desperate. So Oliver Glasner, he's done a great job at Crystal Palace, and he plays the system, the 3-4-2-1 system, and he knows how it works. My problem with that is that he knows how to play the system, but the players don't. I don't think they've got the players to play that system. So I'm not sure whether Oliver Glasner is the right man just because he can play that system, when so blatantly the players aren't the right players to play in that system. So I don't know whether they would have the kahunas, you know, whether they think because they're Manchester United and it is an Instagram football club, isn't it? You know, are we going to go for the safe, this guy knows, or are we going to be kidded and go, Xavi, the Barcelona midfield player who's the coach of Barcelona not so long ago, he's available. Could they be tempted? You mentioned Gareth Southgate. I think Gareth Southgate has quite a close friendship with some of the board members at Old Trafford. He's a safe pair of hands. I think he'd be eaten alive. That's my feeling about Gareth Southgate. Yep. In that, I think he'd be eaten alive. That's my genuine feeling. Iraola at Bournemouth. If I could give him any advice, don't. You know, because he's on a wait for and he will get offered another job. Wait for the better option. Yeah, you know. So, to be fair, Trevor, the Ruben Amorim is an unbelievable story, isn't it? And I kind of think we're no longer worried. I thought he was a decent manager. If we'd have turned up with him when we turned up with Alan Scott, I would have been quite happy. I'd have gone, yeah, this boy's got something, you know, young, innovative, and whatever. I can live with that. But I also think now you look and you go, he's not going to be the one to turn around. I can't see that. So leaving him in charge won't do any damage, will it? So he'll just continue. I thought at the start of the season, I thought they'd finish between 8 and 12, Manchester United. I think they might struggle for that again. It's just unbelievable. He spent over 200 million trying to put the attacking situation right, and between the three of them, they can't hit the barn door. It is incredible.
God bless them all. I think it's tremendous for us.
God bless them. God bless them.
We will finish with a look at Chelsea. And as per usual, we'll just have a quick look at what they've done in terms of their most recent fixtures and results and all the rest of it. So we'll just get that up real quick so everyone can have a quick look at it. And you can see there, the most recent one is they had a home win against Benfica in the Champions League. That was yesterday. They had a reversal at home to Brighton at the weekend, 3-1. Not many people would be too impressed by that. A 2-0 away win at Lincoln City in the EFL Cup. A 2-1 defeat by Manchester United, which I actually saw that game live, and it was a strange game of football. They got beat 3-1 by Bayern in the Champions League before that, a 2-2 with Brentford. And the last win they had was 2-0 over Fulham back on the 30th of August. Not what you'd call a fantastic showing so far this season. In terms of the table, you can see there, you're scrolling down to 8th position to see where they are. And if we go back again to the results that they've had and have a look at their most recent team, the team they put out against Benfica last night, just to see if this is an indicator for us. Like, nobody can argue, Jan. They have a wonderful squad. So they've got Sanchez in goal at the minute, Gusto and Cucurella at fullbacks, Chalaba and Badiashile at centre half with Fernandes and Caicedo, a hell of a pairing in midfield. Buonanotte, Garnacho and Neto behind George up front. And from their bench, they can call on the likes of Jamie Gittins, João Pedro, Reece James, Estevao, Jorgensen, Jorel Hato, Romeo Lavia, remember him, and several others. So, I mean, we get back to it, Jan. This is going to be a hell of a test for the Reds at the weekend. We can't actually downplay it. It's such a big deal, this game, that I'm wondering, is caution the watchword here, or can this particular group of players even do caution? And would you recommend it? Maybe should we go for it? What's your assessment of Chelsea and the threat that they pose to us?
So at the moment, they're not having a great time, Chelsea, and also red cards have been a big part of their story, hasn't it? You know, red card against Benfica, red card against Brighton, red card against Manchester United. So that's been a bit of an issue. And I always think that unlucky with red cards or 2 yellows or whatever, but I also think it's something to do with the coaching and the discipline within the squad. You know what I mean? Get your act together, lads, and behave, and don't get yourself into silly situations. So not a great time for Chelsea. And had they probably played most other clubs, there might have been a bit of a bad atmosphere at some point. But because it's Liverpool, they'll get behind their team, won't they? And there'll be an understanding that there'll be difficult times during the game or whatever, and they'll support them. But I do think that when I look at them and I go, I've never been convinced by the goalkeeper. Chalobah, who played against Benfica, he's suspended. So I don't know who they play as a centre-half. I probably think that Reece James might come in. They haven't got anyone who is an out 9 with Delap being injured, and João Pedro, who came on against Benfica and then got sent off. He's not really a number 9, he's best as a 10. But they do have ability. You mentioned the 2 in midfield, Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez, 2 really, really good players. It'll be interesting to see what he does on the flanks, whether he goes with pace. And I think he probably will go with pace, whether that's Garnacho again, but certainly Petro Neto and whatever. So they got some real ability. Yeah, it can't be anything other than a really, really, really difficult game, Trevor. But of course, it would be a real disappointment if we were to lose. It's all very good going. We've got 3 away games in a week, but that's not a reason to just go, we're going to lose all 3 of them. You know what I mean? We need to get the show back on the road here. But it will be tricky, but we need to get after them, Trevor, because the weakness is at the back. Whoever they decide to play as a centre-half, possibly alongside Patrick, that's not a great setup there. And so I think we need to get after them.
So in order to do that, basically what you're saying is we can't afford to be cautious. Would the one sort of accommodation you'd make towards caution or steadying the ship be what you were suggesting, maybe the more experienced fullbacks plus the return of the old midfield, and he can do whatever he likes then up top, whether that does include Florian Wirtz from the left or Florian Wirtz stepping out for this one? Would that be your compromise for this game?
Well, I don't know about Hugo Ekitike. Was it cramp or was it a hamstring? Is he going to be available or not? Do you know any more than me, Trevor?
Just the latest was cramp, but I didn't like what Arne Slot said in his presser. It didn't sound like cramp what he was saying there, but the word on the street is that it is cramp. I don't know.
I actually think we desperately need him available because he would be the one to hurt them. So Florian Wirtz, I'm looking, Trevor, and I'm thinking, where does he get to influence a game at Stamford Bridge? Against Fernandez and Caicedo? Or playing off the left against Reece James? Possibly not. So I've seen Chelsea. They're young. I wouldn't say they're young and inexperienced, but young, which sometimes makes them make silly decisions. I've seen them play some ridiculously open games. You know, when you get to like that point after 70 minutes and the game opens up and whatever. That's where I'm thinking maybe that's the time for Florian Wirtz, isn't it? I'm not convinced that the time is for him to start this game. So I just can't see where do you pop up? Where does he pop up and influence the game? Because in these areas where he's going to be playing, they're going to be strong.
Just finished with a question from Mr. 365 boy there. He wonders, do you see, we kind of touched on it before, but do you see a room for Ekitike and Isak in the same team, or at least even for part of a game?
I don't think that was the plan when we bought them, but I do think due to what's happened and Cody Gakpo being part of it, and also Luis Diaz going, and I can't quite work out where Chiesa fits into it all. I think we'll see the two of them play a lot of minutes together in various formations. Even where we're going to go with two up front. I think the two of them are going to play a lot of games together. I think Ekiteke already now has almost put him in that position where is he available? Well, he has to play. And then Alexander Isak, well, the fitter he gets, the sharper he gets, he has to play. So I think we'll see the two of them play a lot of minutes together. That wouldn't surprise me. I'm not suggesting they're going to start every game together, but late on in games, after an hour, I don't think he'd be bothered if he has one of them on the bench to put him on and play the two of them together in some kind of formation. I think they'll play a lot of games together.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I kind of look forward to it actively. We will probably take a break for next week where the international break kicks in, and we'll return the week after. But before we go, as ever, Jan, got to get a prediction from you for how you think the Chelsea game will go.
I've had a little bit of a nightmare with my predictions, aren't they, Trevor? Well, actually, I'm blaming the players.
Yeah.
I'm expecting to. It's their fault, isn't it? Get the games won, lads. It can't be that difficult, can it? So the biggest surprise at Galatasaray away was that we didn't score. How often do we leave the pitch without scoring? And that was the first thing I said in the studio. I went, I can't believe Liverpool came without scoring. I don't know what the stats are in terms of scoring or not scoring, but we normally score. This one. Whoa, Trevor, this one is a difficult one, isn't it? I'm going to go Chelsea 1, Liverpool 1.
I kind of had a feeling you might. I wonder would Arne take it if you offered to him as a steadier before we go into this international break. We'll see. Jan, as ever, man, thanks for all the detailed answers and opinions. We very much appreciate it.
No problem, Trevor. I've enjoyed it yet again, and it's a different conversation we've had tonight, because of the way of recent events.
Yeah, they've put it up to us, challenged us a little bit in how we approach it. But like I said to you, Jan and I will be back with you week after next as we get diving back into the run of fixtures towards Christmas. You can be sure that you can follow along here with Jan and I. Thanks to Jan as ever. I've been Trev. Talk to you next week.